Held out as long as I bloody could.
Yeah, Ventru have problems with a lot of
Getting through
stuff.
this, yeah.
Yeah, this is like a nightmare for them.
Mm,
So good game. Good game.
yeah, good game,
Yeah,
good game.
very
Yeah.
interesting finals. So it seemed like Archon made a huge difference there by being allowed in V5.
Yeah, 3 vampires burned in the final. It's a
Yeah.
big difference.
And two from me.
Anything else from those of you here at the finals table? Anything else that you guys felt like made a big difference here in getting here or in the finals itself from the cards that changed?
and from the format itself, maybe.
I mean, I really didn't use any of the new stuff. I think because I think Montreal was already in the
No,
thing.
Montreal was not.
No.
Montreal was new to the
Montreal new.
to
Okay,
V5.
that's right.
Yeah.
And Archon. Oh,
Yeah, well, and Archon, but yeah, we'd already talked about that.
Yeah.
yeah.
Montreal is key for decks like this. Somewhere in these last 16 cards is my Eco Terrorist, which gives me 2 gain a turn. I mean, it's a wall deck lives by that, right? So that's a Montreal is a critical change if you can defend it.
Did you consider dog pack at all?
I don't care.
Okay.
Like, I'm ending combat enough.
Okay.
And I have so much unlock that basically I'm going to get my sniper rifle and eventually I'm just going to work through you. I'd rather spend the 2 pull on the sniper rifle than the dog pack.
Makes sense.
So, but I was actually afraid that you were going to start dropping a bunch of perfect Paragon on me. And, like I have 2 guys, that means I'm burning through cards and stuff. And I was a little surprised that you used the Daring the Dawn so early. I mean, I would have done that on like a bleed for 6 or something. And like,
Yeah, sadly, I didn't have the resources for bleed for 6. I thought the thought process behind Daring the Dawn was that you were going to eventually bleed yourself out with Jack, that I could somehow keep the edge on my side. However, that did not come to pass.
yeah.
Very unfortunate, all in all. But my only comment would be buff Ventru. Please, for the love of God, buff Ventru. They really need it.
Are you? Do you have Creepshow Casino in there?
Yes, and I just pulled it out like at the last moment when I really couldn't afford to pay it. Look, here it is.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, that would have at least helped you, right?
Oh yeah. I
Because
still would have gotten
I am running low on library. Well, so are you. But I mean, yeah, if you'd have gotten that earlier, that would have made a critical difference, I think.
I actually don't know. Let me see. Do I have any more politics even left? 1 KRC is in there. That's all that's left of politics.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, you were doomed.
There was a giant's blood hiding in there as well, but we already used that, so that's out of the question. Yeah, this game was screwed from the moment
we didn't see any reckless ag, which just got added.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like anybody really tried to go anarch voting at all. So
I thought about it, and to be honest, it was my original plan because I have one with several Death Star decks. I was going to build a Death Star deck, but I kind of thought that I might see a lot of Ministry today, and there were 2 at the final, so I'm glad I didn't because I would have done it with Ministry.
Yeah.
That's sort of like the one thing. Like I was kind of trying to figure what other people might play, and the Ministry got some nice cards, and so I was just thinking, oh well, there's probably going to be some of that today. And Platinum Protocol is really good. I'm surprised I didn't see another Gangrel deck because it's so good in V5.
I'm surprised I didn't see a Bruja deck because I thought someone was going to come here and start kicking asses. That's why I loaded my deck with hidden strengths.
Bruja, yeah, that's my big concern with them is they don't, like Venture, they don't have a lot of stealth, so they just got to beat their way through problems.
Yeah, but now they've got
Yeah.
3 vampires now that have fortitude, which is such a big difference now that we've got diversion. You can really get in there, soak up damage, and beat people down.
Yeah,
If I was playing today, it would have been what I would have played.
yeah, I don't, yeah.
Show of force is not irrelevant, so
No, it's not. Although you got to be careful now with AI in the game, like
yeah,
of
that is true.
how you
Yeah.
are bleeding, because if they're titled, then you've got to play Shell Force at inferior or risk Archon investigation. Because I'm assuming you're playing with New Carthage, right? That's in this format.
The
Yeah.
deck does run New Carthage in it, which would be the obvious risk. Yeah, you got to do the inferior, but I mean, you can deal with that. It's not the end of the world to do it.
Yeah. So yeah,
I
I really like the new adds to the format. It feels a little more fleshed out. There's a few things I still would like to see. The fact that we don't have all of the Justicar votes in the
Same.
format yet
Yeah.
is a bummer. I wanted to do something with Nosferatu, but there was no Justicar vote. No Cryptic Rider is also a biggie, right? Like, so because that's one that just really helps you take the leverage that you gained and get the upper hand. I don't know. I enjoyed it. It was fun. I switched 4 cards, I think, from a deck that I built. The Bleeding the Vine that used to be in this deck became Archon Investigation, and I swapped Car Bomb because I see a lot of vehicles for another bait and switch. And so, yeah, I mean, this thing was basically a V5 deck already. I just swapped like 6 cards. So I think Gangrel don't need a lot outside of V5, right?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty true. They got handed a lot for V5, and it really has helped them feel a lot more like the clan they were meant to be, just in general.
Yeah,
it's just honestly, Deep Ecology is such a good card.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So yeah, thanks everyone for playing. That was a really interesting final. Being the one that had like 1+ bleed card in my entire deck besides the Club Illusion, I was like, man, I am drawn. I have the small guns at this table. Everybody else has got like.
Yeah, but each game it was just attrition. You got the positioning to be able to dunk just with the right amount of like timing and I'm not saying it's just luck, because there's a lot of skill in that. Knowing when to and not to make some of the decisions you made were really key. Making especially like I have to say, empowering your prey in the way you did at part of that game was just like, oh, you're gonna do the old fashioned backward, go up the river to win this, aren't you?
I mean, it is. So I'm first seed. I win all tie breaks,
Yeah.
right? I as long with the amount of bleed that was on the table, some VP was going to drop from the table. My prey wasn't going to get 3, so
Yep.
all I needed to do was be last man standing, and I win. Like, and it was I had faced Siegfried's deck in a previous round, and it's got a decent amount of stealth, and I knew it can get by me on occasion, but I lucked into an opening hand Raven Spy and some other stuff, and I was like, so, but he was the one I picked to be my predator. I mostly decided who I wanted to be my predator. Was him because I didn't see any bounce previously from him, and I expected bounce from everybody else. And from my viewpoint, like I never saw him bleed for more than 3. I think I always saw him worried about Archon, which was right, because I mean I burned 4 vampires today with Archon. And it was definitely it was the reason I picked that deck as my predator. I feared it completely. I don't want to make Siegfried feel like I didn't, but in terms of matchups for me, like I could have set prey to the Ventrue assuming I'm just going to block everything they're doing. But if I make a mistake, Queen Anne or somebody banishes my vampires and then I'm screwed, right? And
Right.
and any bleed, like I'm getting double bleed pressure. And I figured this way is I'm only got one predator instead of two.
Yeah.
And it worked out for me. But yeah, so being able to pick as first seed where exactly you want to be, such a strong, like a strong advantage. I think it's too strong, to be honest. I think the final seeding should be randomized, and I think seeding should be tiebreak only. But
We could have a very long discussion about that. I think there is some benefit to final seeding with regard to like the way that rounds will go otherwise. Because I don't think I want a tournament where players are deliberately conceding out points to other players to try to optimize final round. And I could see people finding ways to do that while still following play to win, quote unquote. So I don't.
I don't know. It just feels like if you put these decks in a different order, where I don't get to choose, there's an 80% chance that I end up in the seat that's not good for me.
Oh, I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree that
Or
the
75%
full
chance,
choice.
sorry.
Yeah, I don't disagree that full choice is a little much. But I still want there to be some actual incentive to getting a good record, so you're not incentivized to just try to shoehorn the table a different way, in a more roundabout way, and have a lot more calls to judges about potential collusion.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some gamesmanship questions there, maybe, but
Yep,
it's such a strong advantage.
agreed. No
And
denying.
it's a game within a game.
Yep,
The final seeding selection, right? Like
yep.
if I picked a different seed, I think I'd lose. And I actually saw a guy at Origins played a great deck, went in first seed, had 2 game wins, and picked the exact wrong seat because he had never really had the seat picking experience.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of winning in that final, ended up with 0 VPs. And he should have won that final. Like if he picks a different seat, he wins that final. I know he does. And it just is it's like that's a thing where experience in the finals and seat selection junk gets there's an advantage if you've been there to the dance a lot because you
Agreed.
know the steps.
Yep.
And that's, I think, another one of the reasons I really don't like the picking is I don't want to toot my own horn, but I have a lot of experience picking in the finals. Sometimes sometimes I pick the best option and figure maybe I'll luck into a VP and see what happens because there's no good matchups. And sometimes I say, I think I can maybe with this configuration end up in a spot where I can take advantage of things.
I mean, yeah, but you have a third advantage though that you didn't list there, and that is that you're well renowned and liked. It's really easy to get yourself into some optimal situations if even the smallest twinge of that, like, I don't want to hurt the guy I like, happens to flicker in your head from time to time.
Steve, you're like the only person that ever tells me they like me at the table. So
For crying out loud, I like him, but I wanted to hurt the man every time I got a chance. Trust me. It's just, if I say something wrong, he's gonna block me.
yeah, I,
Yeah.
to be honest, I didn't care if you got a VP. It, I just assumed that the 3-player actually was going to be me with the 2 dominate decks instead of it going backwards. Which, but like it also, like I did the rewilding backwards because I had a valid target, and I've been holding that since my opening hand. That was the card I was debating ditching a long time ago, and but then I was like, that helps put him in range, and that's a turn without predation if Jan gets ousted, because then Lhasa has to take his action, like almost all of his actions to do it, probably. And, it sort of makes it harder for you to oust, which means I get a little more time to work on you before we get to the heads up. And so, it worked out better, but I just assumed when I sat down, if something was going to happen, it was going to be, I was getting to the 3-player without a VP, but with the 2 dominate decks. And it didn't work out exactly that way, but that's just kind of what I was
Well, I think
assuming. But
at the end of the day, I think your goal was just to stay alone with me because there is no way in hell that I can get past you.
yeah. Like I
Never
said,
will I
I
ever.
only needed 2 VPs. With a VP lost, 1 VP gets off the table, right? And um, the moment my predator died, like that's all I needed, because it doesn't matter at that point if I can be the last man standing.
Yeah.
And I would have fed you every other VP on that table once my predator was ousted, because he was first. I don't. It doesn't matter how many VPs you get, because if we tie 2-2, I win the tiebreak. So yeah, I would have been totally happy, like, to just sit there and be like, oh yeah, sure, do I don't care, do 3 and however, as long as I don't take the 1. Like,
Yeah, I think
Alexa should have gone backwards with the banish, honestly. I should have either banished Kuyan or Casey.
uh,
that action I
yeah,
don't think would have happened.
yeah. Well, I mean, you were
I would have been branded a traitor and a deal breaker, but I
Oh,
should have
okay.
done it in retrospect.
sure. I mean, like I don't know who I'm playing with, so I don't know what their reputations are, right? I don't think
Yeah.
I've played a game with any of you.
Yeah.
Like, if you break a deal with me, then I'll just remember that you broke a deal with me in the past, and then that factors into how I make deals.
Yep.
But
So you don't have a list?
oh, I have a list. It's in my head. I've got it memorized. Who's a trustworthy person? And it's funny. I know there's people I will make a deal with in the final round, or in the first round or second round, and I know they're fine. But if I make a deal with them in the final round,
Mhm.
I know that there's a chance they'll break it, because it's the finals, right? Like, I know there are some people that are like, yeah, if it's not like a knack or something, they're not going to care, but they'll keep their deal. And there are some people, and I'm not going to name names, that if they're making it to the final, like, they'll be cutthroat and break deals and stuff. And I know there are some folks that never break deals, and it's always interesting to see that dynamic. But I mean, in terms of deal making, like, I think other than the conversation around my club illusion, I didn't have a deal that lasted more than an action.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, obviously, when I kind of got Lasso wrecked after he made that, I full well expected him to use it on me, and to be quite frank, I didn't care. Like, that, I don't even consider that a deal break, because he said he would give me a couple turns, but he had no turns left. He had 3 pool. He had to make a move, and see what would happen. So, like,
Yeah, I'm
I had
just sad
no
you had
hope.
to arc on him. You had to arc on him on that juicy 9 bleed. That would've been great.
Yeah.
If you didn't have that Archon, then it could have very well been game.
Well, imagine the other way around. Imagine that turn where the Archon hit Jan, and Jan decides to go and hero instead of choosing to, try to survive with a couple of bleed bounces. And suddenly, Carl, because I'm assuming that turn you didn't have any blocks for that because you were tapped out.
There was a period where I was definitely feigning some stuff, for sure. I believe. It was, the turn that Lasso was bounced to me, and then he spying missioned it. That turn was a turn where I was holding an Archon. Actually, I was holding 2 Archons in my hand at that point.
I
I was
assumed you
holding.
had the second one because I made a comment in my chat like that Archon had to have been burning a hole in his hand for quite a bit of time.
I drew the first Archon early, and then I drew the second one, and I'm like, man, this is like I knew Jan was going to hit me with a bleed. I knew I was going to get out of my hand. Then the question is, where's the other one going? And I really wanted it to be Queen Anne to solve some problems. But you know, it had to be Sergio Bueno, and that was fine because that saved me 5 pool or 6 pool or something like that. But yeah, that turn I was real weak, and I Archoned, and then he kind of held back, and I don't know what Jan had in his hand at that point.
Well, I had nothing much.
Oh.
Like if I would have been able to go forward more, I would have done so. So, I mean, probably my deck building skills need to be, trained still. But I felt like it was the only option I had to cycle through some stuff.
Right.
Yeah, because I was intending on playing more on the voting angle, just leaning into it a bit, and maybe it disrupted the. Like, I got some old friends, and
I don't think old
telepathic,
friends is
yeah.
worthwhile. I don't think old friends is worthwhile. That deck is going to succeed or fail on closed session, and perfect Paragon, and I think the one card that deck needs in V5 that's going to make it work is Cavalier, because you want to be able to take 2 actions with your Malkavians, right? You want to be able to bleed, or govern down, and then you want to be able to vote, and even an inferior voter cap to just gain blood. You use so much blood with that deck, right? It doesn't matter. Inferior voter cap is golden. So yeah, I think Cavalier is the card that needs to get into V5 to make that hybrid Malkavian deck work. Because otherwise they don't really have a lot of multi-act options.
No, they don't.
I would agree. That was actually the thing I was thinking throughout the game, was like, this deck is just literally missing 1 to 2 additional actions per turn to be able to really do what it needs to do.
It would be brutal if it had some Cavaliers in it, and just it was like, I'm gonna govern down, which a lot of people don't block, and then I'm gonna unlock, and I'm gonna parity shift you, and then I'm gonna voter cap an inferior and gain all this blood back, and it's just like, okay, like at that point you don't even care if you're really gaining the pool from the parity shift, as long as you can get the vote capacity and the blood back on your guy, because the ousting is so important. Like, yeah, that's the card I think I would like to see for that Malkavian deck. I mean, in terms of like, Malkavian's still stealth bleed. If you want to do stealth bleed, they're going to win, right? Like they can just.
Yeah.
But in terms of like doing something interesting with them, I would like to see Cavalier in V5.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think this is a good point to wrap things up. I am getting pretty exhausted here, so.
Yeah, thanks for running again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
glad to do it. We'll do
everyone.
another one of these probably sometime around November. I think it's what it sounds like the scaling for when the not Sabat set comes out.
Yeah.
So
I think
The La Sombra and the Ravnos, you mean?
yeah,
Or-
La Sombra,
No.
Ravnos, and Salubri.
No. It's Zmici.
Or Zmici.
Ravnos.
You're right.
Yeah.
Zmici, not La
And-
Sombra.
La Sombra and Hecata are supposed for the beginning of next year, I think.
Don't think beginning of next year, but we'll see. Because
but
it seems like its development's a little ways out, but the people that know better that are here can't mention anything about it. So
Oh, thanks all.
thank you. Take care.
And as a last word, buff Ventru.